Amazing transformation of my grandmother. 25 years of preparation revealed a hidden truth. Emily couldn't believe the headlines swirling in her mind as she rummaged through the attic. This is unbelievable, she gasped, holding up a frayed letter from a dusty box she'd stumbled upon. The chilly air of the loft wrapped around her like fog, each breath filled with the scent of ages past. Her heart raced. Every letter she read revealed pieces of her grandmother Ruth's life she had never known, letters from comrades, faded snapshots of moments frozen in time, and tokens of bravery. These items breathed life into the woman she had adored since childhood. And now, this was the transformation she never expected. Ruth, now a lively war veteran in her late 80s, had given Emily love and resilience, but all those stories of heroism had gone unspoken, hidden behind a modest facade. Emily felt a pang of guilt for never asking deeper questions, yet that guilt transformed into an urgent desire to honor her grandmother. "There's more to you," Emily exclaimed, tears glistening in her eyes. "You deserve recognition, Grandma." Ruth had played an integral role in the town's history, something the upcoming honor ceremony for veterans aimed to celebrate. Yet, as Emily frantically pieced together the contents of the box, she noticed a glaring omission. Ruth's name was conspicuously absent from the list. A tight knot formed in her stomach. How could the town ignore someone who had sacrificed so much? With determination shooting through her veins, Emily set forth to advocate for Ruth. Friends, neighbors, even customers at the pharmacy rallied around her cause, drawn by the warmth and kindness Ruth had shown them. "Everyone knows her," they shouted, almost in unison, their faces lighting with recognition. Emily's heart swelled with hope. Maybe there was still time to make things right. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Emily felt the pressure mounting. The ceremony was just days away. Emotions and expectations hung in the air, thicker than the falling snow outside. Every meeting filled with bureaucratic indifference chipped away at her resolve. But she pressed on, fueled by Ruth's quiet strength. "We can change this," Emily whispered to herself as she fought against the tug of her responsibilities at home. Could she juggle her ambition and the love she had for her grandmother? The fateful day of the ceremony arrived, the sun breaking through clouds like a promise. Hope fluttered in Emily's chest like a flag raised high, signaling that this was the moment they'd both been waiting for. Yet, the ceremony unfolded, and as names were called, a chilling silence filled the crowd when Ruth's name remained unspoken. Faces twisted in discomfort, and guilt washed over the audience like an unwelcome tide, but then, something incredible happened. With unexpected vigor, Ruth rose from her seat, her back straightening as she summoned every ounce of courage. "Let me share my story," she said, her voice ringing clear. Emily watched, tears flowing freely, as the stories poured from Ruth's heart, stories of courage and heartbreak that turned the whispers into gasps of understanding. Would the town finally recognize her grandmother's legacy, or would they let this moment slip through their fingers, like so many grains of sand? As Ruth stood there, facing the crowd, Emily's heart soared and sank all at once. This was it. The moment of truth. Her grandmother was finally stepping out from the shadows, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. Faces in the audience shifted, a mix of surprise and admiration blurring their features. Ruth cleared her throat, and the tension in the air thickened. "I joined the service because I wanted to make a difference, and I did." She gazed into the crowd, the warmth of familiarity sparking recognition in many eyes. "I faced battles, both on the field and at home. But more than anything, I fought for the people I love, for my family, my friends, and this town." Each word was a revelation, a testimony to a lifetime lived with purpose. The applause began slowly, hesitant at first, then grew louder until it enveloped her in a wave of support. Emily wiped away tears as she watched her grandmother transform into a figure of strength. It was a performance she never knew was in her. Ruth's voice crescendoed, filling the space between them. I'm here because we must remember that everyone's story counts. Every scar tells a story, and every life touched by war deserves recognition. With every sentence, Ruth dismantled the wall of ignorance around her legacy. Emily felt pride swelling in her chest. This was more than Ruth's story, it was their family's, their heritage. But amid the growing cheers, a hollow echo thudded in Emily's mind. Moments before, Ruth's name hadn't even graced the program, yet there she stood, a testament to resilience. Would the town change its tune, or would it falter upon hearing Ruth's truth? Suddenly, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Mr. Thompson, the mayor, stood frozen, his lips pursed tightly. Emily had pushed for his support, but his gaze was one of uncertainty. She felt anger bubbling inside her. He should change his mind, she thought fiercely. Ruth might be shining now, but would that sustain? When Ruth finished, the crowd erupted into genuine applause, voices chanting her name. Emily's smile was wide and bright, but shadows danced in her mind. She knew this wouldn't end quietly with a few accolades. Would they recognize her grandmother in the official record now? Would they understand the importance of her contribution, or would they brush it away again? After the ceremony, as families began to disperse, Emily raced to find Mr. Thompson. The crowd shifted like the tide, people swarming to congratulate Ruth. With every step, anxiety clawed at her, quickening her heartbeat. Emily spotted him near the exit, his arms crossed defensively. She approached, forcing herself to breathe. Mr. Thompson. She called out, urgency in her voice. He turned, eyebrows raised. You can't let this go unrecognized. Look at the impact she's had. This isn't just about today. He scanned the crowd, and Emily didn't miss the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Emily, he began cautiously, it's not as simple, of course, it's not simple. She interjected, her voice rising. But it matters. There's history here that you're actively ignoring. A fire ignited inside her. She couldn't let her grandmother's bravery remain unseen. They had fought too hard for this moment. As Mr. Thompson hesitated, Emily pressed forward, resolute, her voice softened. Will you change that? Will you make sure everyone knows her name? The moment hung heavy in the air, charged with potential. But what would he say? The future of Ruth's legacy lay in that answer. Would they stand together in acknowledgement or slip back into indifference? Emily held her breath, searching Mr. Thompson's eyes for a sign. The crowd buzzed with excitement behind her, but in that moment, everything felt as if it had come to a standstill. She felt the weight of the world resting on her shoulders. How could he dismiss this? How could he turn away from the truth that had finally emerged from the shadows? It's complex, he muttered, his gaze drifting as if seeking escape from the pressure of the moment. Complexity is what defines us. Emily shot back, her voice ringing with unwavering passion. Ruth's experiences, her sacrifices, they matter. We can't brush over them. Not now. Mr. Thompson's lips pressed together, deep lines forming on his forehead, revealing the inner struggle brewing within him. The townspeople around them had begun to notice the exchange, their whispers weaving through the crowd. Emily could feel their anticipation, their hope. She wasn't just fighting for Ruth, she was fighting for all of them. Then, a flicker of clarity sparked in the mayor's eyes. Emily, if I push this through, it could change the town. It might change how we honor our veterans. But, he hesitated, the council, they're not ready. They won't easily accept this shift. Then we make them ready. She exclaimed, urgency driving her words. What's change without a little push? We can't let this moment slip away. Your leadership is critical. You can be the catalyst. As she spoke, she could see something softening in his stance. The hard lines of his expression gave way to traces of contemplation. He looked back toward Ruth, who was now surrounded by friends and family, their faces glowing with pride and joy. Mr. Thompson turned back to Emily, his arms slowly unfolding from their crossed position. It's going to take more than just words to convince them. You'll have to gather support, organize a presentation that shows Ruth's true value, something tangible. They need visuals, statistic stories. It has to resonate. Emily's heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and fear. I can do that. We can do that. Just give me the chance. You'll need more than that, Thompson advised, his tone more serious now. You must be ready for resistance. There are folks who challenge this, those who understand. It won't just be a fight, it'll be a battle. With resolve flooding her veins, Emily nodded. I'm ready. We've been ready. My grandma's been waiting decades for this. For people to listen. A weight slipped from his shoulders, and he nodded with a newfound determination. All right. Let us make this happen. I'll support you, but you need to gather your evidence and rally the community. This is going to be powerful, Emily. But be prepared for it to get messy. Just then, Ruth appeared at her side, a radiant smile lighting her weathered face. What's all this commotion? She asked, her eyes bright and curious. Emily looked at the two most important people in her life, her grandmother and the mayor. Ruth, we're going to make sure your story is known. Not just here today, but for all the years to come. Ruth's expression shifted to one of deep pride, her eyes glistening. I never thought I'd see the day. As Emily stared into her grandmother's eyes, a fire ignited within her. But as much as the hope surged, a nagging worry remained in the back of her mind. Would they truly rally behind Ruth? Would the council listen? Or would they crumble under tradition? The crowd was still buzzing, yet something whispered doubt. They were not at the finish line. They were just at the beginning of what felt like a long and uncertain road ahead. With resolve, she squeezed Ruth's hand and turned back to the mayor. We start tomorrow. But deep inside, a gnawing thought lingered. Would Ruth finally find her place in town history, or would she be left to fade again? The morning light poured into the small kitchen, casting warm golden rays across the table where Emily was spread out with papers, photos, and notes. Markers discarded, empty coffee cups cluttered, she barely noticed the chaos around her. The clatter of pots and pans remained a distant sound as her grandmother busied herself nearby, humming a tune from long ago. How are you holding up, Em? Ruth asked, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast. Emily looked up, determination set in her eyes. I'll be fine as long as we get this right, Ruth. Ruth's smile widened, but doubt flickered in her features. Do you really think they'll listen? The council, I mean. I know they will, Emily insisted, her voice taking on a fierce tone. We just need to give them something they cannot ignore. Ruth nodded slowly, her heart aching with hope. She had spent so many years feeling invisible, unjustly forgotten by her town. Now, her granddaughter was fighting for her. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The plan was careful and clear. They would gather stories from those who remembered Ruth's service, the hidden sacrifices, and the impact she had, but that meant reaching out to old friends. Emily knew she couldn't do this alone. With each email sent and every phone call made, Emily felt her nerves grow. She was stepping into the unknown, and each unanswered call was a twist of the knife. What if they don't care? She muttered to herself, crumpling a sheet of paper. Ruth caught the frustration in her voice. They will care, my dear. Look at your heart. It's filled with love and dedication. You can't underestimate the power of that. Taking a deep breath, Emily tried to shake the anxiety. You're right. We just need a few stories to start with. If I can show them how much you've meant to this town. As the day drifted on, Emily donned her brave face and visited the homes of Ruth's old friends. Some were excited to share their memories, while others hesitated, reluctant to remember a past intertwined with grief. Are you sure this is what she wants? One friend asked, a shadow crossing her face. It's been so long, and people forget. But we can't forget. Emily urged, her eyes shining. We must honor her. It's overdue, and it's what the people need. This isn't just for Ruth, it's for everyone who fought and struggled and never got the recognition they deserve. The woman paused, suddenly thoughtful. You're right. It's about time we spoke up. With renewed energy, Emily collected more stories than she ever imagined she could. Each voice brought a new piece of the puzzle, affirming what she had always known deep down: Ruth was more than just a faded image in a dusty album. Later that evening, surrounded by memories and heartfelt words, Emily felt the weight of hope settle within her. It was a different kind of burden, not that of fear, but of responsibility. We have to make sure everyone hears this, she whispered to Ruth, gripping her hand tightly. Indeed we will, Ruth replied, her voice full of conviction. It's time to show them who I really am. But as excitement bubbled within Emily, doubt loomed like a storm cloud. Would their efforts stand against the tide of tradition? As she gazed out the window at the fading sun, a resolve formed in her mind. Tomorrow is just the beginning. But we need to know. What is their response going to be? And with that thought, a sense of uncertainty flickered in her chest. Would they embrace this change, or would they resist at all costs? The next morning brought a rush of emotions for Emily. She woke up before dawn, her mind racing with thoughts of the day ahead. Today was not just another day, it was the day they'd share Ruth's story with the council. Both excitement and fear coiled in her stomach. As Emily made her way to the kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Ruth was already there, stirring a pot of oatmeal, her face illuminated by the early sunlight. She seemed calm, but Emily noticed a slight trembling in her grandmother's hands. Are you ready? Ruth asked, her voice steady despite the subtle tremor. Almost. I just wish I could know how they'll react, Emily admitted, pouring a cup of coffee. Remember, it's not just about them. It's about us, Ruth said firmly. This is our story. They sat down to eat, the sound of spoons clinking against bowls punctuating the silence. Emily picked at her oatmeal, her mind swirling with what-ifs. Every story she gathered felt like a stone in her pocket, heavy but necessary. They were weighted reminders of Ruth's life, stories that ranged from heroics to quiet sacrifices. Do you think they'll actually listen? Do you think they'll see you? Emily asked, a lump forming in her throat. Ruth sighed, her eyes thoughtful. If they have an ounce of compassion, they will. But even if they don't, we'll know the truth. That's what matters. Determined to hold on to those words, Emily nodded. With breakfast behind them, they gathered the letters and photographs, the evidence of Ruth's legacy, and loaded everything into the car. Driving to the town hall, the weight of anticipation pressed against them. The streets were still quiet, the world outside their window bathed in a golden hue. As they entered the town hall, Emily's heart raced. The familiar wooden doors loomed ahead, marking the threshold between their past and the acknowledgment they so desperately sought. The room was filled with townspeople and council members, the air thick with chatter. It felt overwhelming. Emily felt Ruth's hand on her shoulder, a grounding presence that brought her back to the moment. Just breathe, Ruth whispered, squeezing her shoulder. As they walked to the front of the room, Emily's pulse quickened. The council members were seated, eyes shifting to the duo. She cleared her throat, feeling smaller yet resolute. Thank you for allowing us to present today, Emily began. I'm here to tell you a story. A story of a woman who served, sacrificed, and loved this community more than anyone knows. Ruth stood by her side, strength radiating from her. The first story was shared, a tale told through laughter and tears. Emily recounted the friendships her grandmother had built, the lives she had touched, and how some still remembered the warmth she brought, even in the darkest times. As she spoke, she could see heads nodding, expressions shifting from indifference to intrigue. Resonating murmurs filled the room. It was just a glimmer, but it was there, the urge to listen, to connect. But as she dove deeper into the stories, a sudden voice rang out, piercing through the hopeful atmosphere. Why should we change anything? This town has always been this way. Emily's heart dropped. The voice belonged to a longtime council member, known for his stubbornness. A ripple of murmurs surged through the room, doubts creeping back in. Ruth's grip on Emily tightened. Hold on, Em, she whispered. Emily's mind raced. This was the moment to stand firm. Because honoring the past means recognizing those who helped shape it, she replied, her voice steady. Hands gripped the edges of the podium as Emily focused on the crowd. What we've done in the past matters, but so do the stories we choose to tell and the truths we dare to share. An air of anticipation hummed in the room, but the rejection had been thrown like a shadow over their efforts. Was it enough? As the council members exchanged glances, Emily felt her breath catch. The moment of truth hovered before them, as fragile and tense as a web spun in the early morning dew. Will they reject her once more? She thought. Emily glanced at Ruth, whose eyes glimmered with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Are we making a difference? Before she could voice her fears, the council members began to respond, their faces cloaked in indecision. Let us see where this goes, one of them finally began, but their intentions remained as unclear as the afternoon sky slowly darkening outside. The room held its breath. What would happen next? Would they finally bring Ruth into the light, or would the shadows of the past cling to them, refusing to let go? A quiet tension settled over the room as the council member's words hung in the air. Emily could sense the weight of uncertainty pushing down on them. She looked at Ruth, whose expression was a blend of hope and resilience, as if she were silently urging her to keep going. Thank you for your consideration, Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. But this isn't just a story about the past. It's about who we are and who we could be. We have the chance to honor everyone, to embrace the diversity that has shaped our community. Ruth took a small step forward, her presence commanding even in her frailty. Every person deserves to be seen, she said, her voice carrying strength. I'm not just a name in a history book. I'm part of this community like so many others whose stories have been silenced. We need to change that. The murmurs in the room shifted slightly, as if new energy rippled through the crowd. A younger council member raised her hand, hesitantly breaking the growing silence. Ruth, you've contributed so much over the years. I'm curious, what do you feel is missing? What do you want us to understand? Ruth's gaze softened, an earnest fire igniting in her eyes. It's the stories, the parts of my life that are often overlooked. The love, the struggles, the real experiences. They reflect our shared humanity. We shouldn't be afraid of facing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Emily could see faces in the audience shifting, some showing genuine interest while others remained skeptical. The council room, which seemed imposing only moments before, now felt full of possibilities. Everyone makes sacrifices, Emily said, her voice breaking a little. But Ruth's sacrifices shaped this community. Think about the moments that define us. Those are the stories we need to hear. The stories that bring us together rather than tear us apart. Still, the older council member scoffed lightly, shaking his head as though they were grasping at straws. It's all well and good for you to stand here and talk about change, but we need to think practically. What does this mean for our traditions? Traditions evolve, Ruth replied, unwavering. Every generation brings something new to the table. It's how we grow. Emily felt the tide shifting ever so slightly. The uninspired responses gave way to a curious silence as others began to see the truth in Ruth's words. What if we started to look at these stories not just as a burden, but as a strength? Ruth continued. What if we allowed ourselves to be challenged by our past? Maybe that would bring us closer. A ripple of agreement passed through the audience. Emily noticed a few heads nodding, including that of the younger council member. Hope fluttered in her chest. Perhaps it's time we open a dialogue about these stories, a woman from the back spoke up, her voice carrying a sense of urgency. We owe it to everyone who came before us and to those who will come after. Encouraged, Emily pressed on. Let us commit to sharing these stories as a community. Let us create a platform for every voice, especially those that have been muted for so long. The air crackled with anticipation, each person leaning forward, minds whirring with the possibilities laid before them. Emily's heart raced as she realized they were inching closer to something monumental. Together, we can build a narrative that celebrates all of us, Emily breathed out, feeling the warmth of Ruth's hand in hers. But just as hope swelled, a deep voice cut through the renewed excitement. And what happens if those stories lead to division? Are we really prepared for that? It was the older council member again, his question raining cold water on their burgeoning flame. The crowd momentarily hushed, weighing his words, uncertainty creeping back into their expressions. Emily knew they would have to confront not just the past, but the fears that clung to it. Division is already here, Emily replied, summoning her courage. But creating space for understanding can bring us together. We can't let fear of change hold us back. As she finished, Emily felt a flicker of hope. But in the back of her mind lingered the nagging worry. Was this truly the moment they'd break through, or was it the precursor to more resistance? The room hung in suspense, anticipation thick enough to cut through. Would the council embrace the change or retreat once more? All eyes were on them, waiting for the next move, the next truth to unfold. A heavy silence enveloped the council room, each member grappling with the weight of the older council member's question. Emily's heart raced as she scanned the faces around her. Some looked thoughtful, while others seemed unconvinced, their frowns deepening with doubt. Ruth shifted slightly, leaning in closer to Emily, her warm presence a comforting anchor. We can't ignore the stories that have been buried, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rising tension. They deserve to be told, regardless of the fear they might stir. Emily nodded, her determination solidifying. She stepped forward once more, her intention clear. Look, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have our own narratives that shape who we are. But those differences can enrich our community. They don't have to divide us. A murmur of agreement rose from the back of the room, puncturing the heaviness. A woman with vibrant hair stood, her eyes sparking with passion. I've felt that divide. I grew up feeling like my family's history wasn't important enough to mention in school. But it is our pains, our victories, they're part of the tapestry. Emily felt a rush of warmth. It was happening, a shift, a connection forming between strangers through shared experiences. The energy in the room swelled as whispers of agreement cascaded like ripples in water. Ruth's frail voice rose above the chatter. When I think of what it means to belong, I think of love. My love for this community, my love for the people who have walked their own journeys. Our stories form bridges, not walls. But just as the optimism began to feel like a collective heartbeat, that skeptical council member countered sharply, but emotions can cloud judgment. Emotions don't solve our problems, they create more. Emily drew a deep breath, allowing herself to acknowledge the fear lurking behind his words. It's not just about emotions. It's about truth, understanding the pain we've caused one another. Isn't that the foundation for healing? We can't build strong communities on unspoken histories. The room fell silent once again. Then, from the shadows, a voice emerged, a young man in glasses, visibly shaking, yet with an earnestness that captured everyone's attention. What if we leaned into those stories instead of shying away? What's to stop us from creating a community that's willing to listen, to change? Encouraged by his bravery, murmurs of support rippled through the audience. A few nodded appreciatively, while others exchanged glances filled with dawning realization. Imagine if we started a series of community gatherings, Emily suggested, her voice growing steadier with each word. Spaces where we can share and listen, learn from one another. We could spark a true dialogue. Ruth's grip on Emily's hand tightened, warmth flooding through her as she realized they were forging a new path, a path of understanding, of courage, wrapped in community spirit. But it can't just be talk, the younger council member interjected. We need actionable steps. How do we ensure these stories are respected, honored? What's next? Emily opened her mouth to respond, but hesitation washed over her. Suddenly, the enormity of the task hung heavy in the air again. What if we fall short? What if we don't follow through? She felt a wave of doubt flash through her, battling against the hope that had begun to blossom. But as she glanced at Ruth, who yet again held her gaze steady and unwavering, something inside her shifted. There was no time for fear. I don't have all the answers, Emily began, her voice steadier this time. But we can't let uncertainty paralyze us. We'll face whatever challenges come together. It starts here, today. Just as she spoke the words with newfound conviction, the older council member stood. This initiative will demand resources and careful planning, he said, his expression conflicted. Are we truly prepared for the commitment it'll take? With a resolute nod, Emily met his gaze, her own heart racing. We owe it to ourselves and to the generations that came before. We can't shy away from duty. Let us begin with the stories of those who aren't in this room. Right then, as the council wrestled with the complexities of change, Emily realized they were standing at a precipice, one that felt exhilarating yet daunting. What if they dared to jump into this unknown? Would they rise anew or find themselves at the mercy of the winds of doubt, flying apart when they needed to be together? Each heartbeat echoed with possibilities. The room vibrated with anticipation, and as Emily's gaze swept across her companions, she felt the pulse of hope. What awaited them on the other side? The tension in the council room crackled like electricity, filling the air with an urgent energy. Emily felt the weight of every expectant stare. What would they do next? She could almost see the flickers of doubt etched on the older council member's face and the fire of determination in Ruth's eyes. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a spark to ignite something great. Let us take a vote, Ruth suggested, her voice steady despite the tension. We need to decide if we're willing to proceed with this initiative. She looked around, her gaze meeting each member without backing down. Emily could feel the resolve building in the room. A soft murmur of agreement circled, but there were still hesitant voices. We need a clear plan, one woman remarked, her brow furrowed. This isn't just a matter of sharing stories. It requires structure and commitment. Emily took a deep breath, focusing on the woman's concern. You're right. But we can create that structure together. We can pull from our diverse experiences and establish something meaningful. That's the foundation of community sharing, growing, evolving. A senior council member raised a skeptical eyebrow, but Emily detected a hint of curiosity as he leaned in. You're suggesting we become active participants in our own narrative? Yes. The enthusiasm surged within her, and she couldn't help but smile. We become the storytellers and the listeners. We create safe spaces, workshops, even art showcases, things that celebrate our journeys while acknowledging the past. The room hummed with conversation. Ideas swirled in the air like whispers of hope. Emily felt an overwhelming sense of purpose pulling her along. But what if they stumbled? What if the process unraveled instead of uniting them? Suddenly, a young woman, her voice visibly shaky but filled with emotion, said, "What if we uncover stories that even we weren't ready to face?" This could bring some difficult truths to the forefront. The air thickened as silence settled again, the weight of her words hanging in the room. Emily nodded, recognizing that vulnerability was part of this journey. Exactly. But facing those truths is how we heal. It's how we grow. We've all got scars, and scars tell a story. Let us not shy away from that. Ruth's fingers squeezed Emily's hand again, her encouragement transforming the moment from daunting to powerful. Emily caught the eye of that young man who had been shaking earlier. His nod felt like a silent promise, an acknowledgment of change beginning to take root. We can hold those conversations in our schools, our homes, our local community centers. He added, with a renewed spark of courage. Imagine if we could get our families involved too. Imagine their stories blending with ours, what a force that would be. A ripple of excitement traveled across the room. Emily could almost see visions forming in everyone's minds. Generational gaps could close, shared memories could weave together. It felt like they were on the brink of something far larger than themselves. Then, the skeptical council member spoke again, a cautious tone slipping through. It still hinges on how we'll address the pushback. Not everyone will be receptive to this journey. Emily squared her shoulders. What if we framed it not as confrontation, but as invitation? Like inviting neighbors to a potluck. Sharing food, sharing stories, cooking comes from the heart. We can connect in that warmth. The room bubbled with growing enthusiasm, voices building in hopeful harmony. Emily marveled at the transformation around her. Are they really breaking down barriers? Could this actually work? As their discussions intensified, Emily felt something shift in her gut. It was a whirlpool of excitement and trepidation. They were diving deeper into shadows and light, and then, just as the energy peaked, the council room doors swung open. A dark figure stepped inside, drawing everyone's attention, and the warmth of hope suddenly coiled into something sharp and cautious. Who was that, and what news would they bring? Would they throw a wrench in this budding alliance, or could they become an important voice of affirmation? Emily's heart raced anew as she faced the unknown. The room's dynamism hung in the balance. What awaited them in this new chapter? The figure stepped into the light, a familiar presence amongst the unfamiliar tension. It was Henry, the longtime community organizer, but something about him felt different. His brow was furrowed, and his usual warm smile was absent. The chatter in the room faded as all eyes shifted to him, curiosity intertwining with concern. "Henry? What brings you here?" Ruth asked, her voice laced with an edge of anticipation. The council had leaned forward collectively, ready to absorb whatever news this unexpected visitor carried. Henry cleared his throat, his gaze darting from one council member to another. "I overheard some of what you all were discussing. The community project, it's important work, but," he hesitated, gathering his thoughts. "I have to tell you, not everyone will be on board. There are whispers some people are not just skeptical, they're hostile." A ripple of worry surged through the room. Emily's heart sank. She had sensed the potential for division, but hearing it voiced out loud made it stark and real. "Can you help us understand why?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We're trying to build something here, to bring people together." "There's a fear," Henry said slowly, leaning against the table as if the weight of the community was pressing down on him. "Some people think this initiative could expose old wounds, dust off stories they'd rather remain buried. They wonder why they should trust their neighbors who they've kept at arm's length for so long." "Isn't that the point?" Emily spoke, her determination bubbling back to the surface. "To heal those wounds? To trust each other? It doesn't have to be about confrontation. It can be a bridge." Emily could see some heads nodding, others still frozen in anxiety. She turned back to Ruth, seeking support. "Henry," Ruth interjected, her voice firm, "can you tell us who these people are? We need specific concerns if we're truly going to address them." Henry sighed, looking conflicted. "It's not just one group. It's a mix older residents who've seen the town change rapidly and feel unheard. Families caught up in newer dynamics, young voices who feel their stories don't hold weight. And you may not want to hear this, but even some of the council members have their reservations." The room went quiet. The shared energy that had built just moments earlier began to wane, each person grappling with the new perspective that Henry had revealed. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. How could she rally these wounded spirits? How could they frame their journey as an invitation rather than an intrusion? "What if we organized a community forum?" she proposed, her voice gaining strength. "We can create a safe space for everyone to voice their fears. Address the concerns head-on and show them they're not alone in their stories." A murmur of agreement broke across the room, igniting faint flickers of hope again. Henry's eyes brightened just slightly. "If you could get people talking, truly talking, then maybe, just maybe, we could start to stitch the gaps back together." With each passing second, Emily felt the weight of this challenge settle into her core. She saw visions of a diverse tapestry crafted from all their stories, a collage of experience and understanding. But just as hope flamed anew, doubt crept in. What if their courage faltered in the face of real opposition? What if they bared too much too soon? "We'll need strong support," Emily warned. "This could very well uncover raw emotions. It could get messy. Can we handle that?" Henry nodded thoughtfully. "If you want to create something impactful, you need to be prepared for the fallout. Some will embrace it, others will push back. But the choice is clear, you have to decide what you stand for." For a moment, they were all simply a group of people grappling with uncertainties, confusion layering themselves over layers of what had come before. As they collectively pondered their next steps, Emily's heart fluttered with a spark of excitement. They were stepping into uncharted territory, one that could redefine their futures. And just then, the door opened again, this time revealing a group of community members standing in the threshold, curious hesitance etched on their faces. Emily's pulse quickened. Were they ready to join the conversation? Would they step inside or walk away? What now? She whispered, each heartbeat echoing with possibility and apprehension. Would they stand together, ready to dive into whatever awaited them? Or would fear pull them back into silence? Emily stood at the edge of a turning point, a moment she had long dreamed about. The room was packed, faces both familiar and foreign filled with expectation, their whispers a collective hum of curiosity. She felt her heart race, echoing in her ears, as those first faces stepped inside. Were they ready to confront the truth? Would they hear what Ruth had been holding back for years? Come on in. Emily encouraged, projecting warmth and openness. The newcomers looked hesitant, but one familiar face, a neighbor from a block away, moved forward, followed by others. The invitation had been heard. With the gathering of community members, the air thickened with anticipation. This was it. We're here to share stories, Emily began, her voice steady yet soft, fostering intimacy in the moment. Stories that connect us, that define us. Your voices are just as important as Ruth's. Ruth stood behind her, a radiant smile illuminating her face as she surveyed the crowd. She could feel the weight of years slipping away with each breath, finally visible in a space where silence had once drowned her voice. As Emily told Ruth's story, recounting tales of resilience, bravery, and love, she watched the audience shift, nodding along, murmurs rising, empathy weaving through the air. Faces softened in recognition. Each tale brought Ruth's life alive, transforming her into more than a name. She became a symbol of unwavering love for her community. Do you remember how every 4th of July Grandma would bake pies for the block party? Emily laughed, glancing at Ruth. The crowd chuckled, nodding in agreement. Her desserts were legendary. They brought everyone together. Ruth's laughter mingled with the crowd, her spirit rising as she remembered those days, pure love encapsulated in sweet, flaky goodness. A woman in the audience piped up, I remember those pies. She never gave up on the bake-off, did she? As shared memories flowed, Emily felt the tension in the room ebbing, warmth weaving through the gathered hearts. The energy shifted from uncertainty to connection, stories shared sparking the light of understanding. Then, someone raised their hand. Why should we change the way things were? A voice cut through, resonating with the unease that once filled Emily's mind. Because we owe it to each other, Emily countered gently. We need to recognize how history shapes us. Ruth deserves to be acknowledged as part of that history. Everyone deserves to be part of this community. Ruth stepped forward, her hand on Emily's shoulder. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us. We've all faced battles, sometimes quietly. And it's time we speak up. A ripple of approval surged through the crowd. People were touched. Eyes sparkled as they connected over similar struggles, memories twinkling like stars against the backdrop of the past. Maybe this is what we need, someone exclaimed. A chance to listen and reflect, to understand our neighbors better. The seeds of progress were sown as fresh ideas blossomed in the hearts of the audience. A community forum blossomed in discussions, plans for events on their calendars were etched down, a commitment underscoring the desire for change. Through laughter and tears, they exchanged stories and promises until a shared resolve filled the room. Emily glanced at Ruth, whose face radiated joy and love. Their eyes met, an unspoken bond threading them closer together, connecting past and present with hope for a brighter future. Suddenly, as if echoing her thoughts, a voice spoke from the back. Let us create a tribute, something tangible to honor Ruth and the others who've given so much. The idea ignited in the room like fireworks, spurring more voices to add their 2 cents about a possible festival celebrating contributions, arts, and history. The council, once skeptical, now stirred with conversation, nodding and jotting down notes, finally ready to embrace what had felt like a giant leap only moments ago. The forum emerged into a vibrant collaboration of hope and action. Emily realized they were not just raising Ruth's name but igniting a flame for every unheard story in the community. They were crafting a legacy that regarded the beauty of the past without fear of confronting its shadows. Ruth exclaimed, "Every story shared means every person counted." A wave of applause erupted, fueling the room, raising the spirits of everyone gathered. Later that night, the townspeople trickled out with joy in their hearts, each one standing a little taller, emboldened to share and be heard side by side, woven together as they'd always been meant to be. Emily felt a glow in her chest. She was tired yet triumphant, her heart full. All at once, she knew it wasn't just about Ruth's recognition. It was about a community reclaiming its voice. They had fought together, faced fears together, and emerged triumphantly. And just like that, Emily understood her grandmother's story wasn't just about Ruth, it was about redefining how their town remembered all the brave souls lost in history's untold. Together they made a choice to listen, to learn, to grow, and, most importantly, to honor every voice that had helped shape the fabric of their community. Now it's your turn. Don't wait not even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to catch the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is what makes these powerful stories possible. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Let's talk about how we can all honor the stories in our lives. And don't forget to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who could use this inspiring transformation in their lives. You need to share these heartfelt moments. Every voice matters.